The sun was setting over the vast dry desert, casting long shadows across the red earth. It was in this harsh, unforgiving land that Atsari had spent her years waiting, alone. In a small cave hidden deep within the mountains, where the winds howled through the narrow canyons and the only sounds were the calls of distant birds and the rustling of the wind through dry brush. Atsari had once been a young girl, filled with laughter and the warmth of her people. Her tribe had thrived in the desert, living off the land with skills passed down from generation to generation. But that had all changed when one day, her people had disappeared without a trace. They had gone on a journey, one that Atsari had never fully understood, and they had not returned. The years had passed, 5 years to be exact, 5 long years filled with uncertainty, loneliness, and grief. Atsari had learned to survive on her own, hunting, gathering, and navigating the vast stretches of the desert. She had become one with the land, a part of it. But no matter how much time passed, her heart still longed for her tribe's return. Every night she would sit outside her cave, staring at the sky, hoping for a sign from the stars, hoping to see her people's campfires on the distant horizon. But the nights grew colder, the seasons passed, and the signs never came. Atsari didn't know what had happened to them. Had they been captured by soldiers? Had they been wiped out by disease? Or had they simply vanished, lost to the winds like the sand itself? She didn't have answers. She only had hope, a hope that one day they would come back. Her father's voice echoed in her memory, telling her to wait. Patience, Atsari. The land is never wrong. It will guide you when the time is right. And so she waited. It was on a dusty afternoon in early spring when everything changed. Atsari had been tracking a herd of wild mustangs across the flatlands, her feet light on the earth as she followed their hoofprints. Her eyes scanned the horizon, her sharp senses alert for any movement. She had been following them for days, trying to find the right moment to strike. But that day, something was different. As she crouched low behind a rock outcrop, her eyes caught the glint of something unfamiliar. A figure, a man, a cowboy riding a horse across the plains. She frowned, her hand instinctively resting on the bow at her side. She had seen men like him before, settlers, travelers, soldiers, but none had ever ventured so far into her territory. Atsari watched him for a long while, waiting for him to pass by. But something in the man's posture caught her attention. He was not like the others. He seemed tired, but there was a kind of quiet strength in the way he carried himself. He didn't seem to be looking for trouble. Curiosity stirred in her chest, and against her better judgment, she decided to follow him. Hours later, as the sun began to dip low in the sky, Atsari found herself standing in the shadows of a small canyon, watching the cowboy from a distance. He had set up camp for the night, building a small fire and preparing a meal. She studied him carefully, wondering what his intentions were. She had learned long ago not to trust outsiders. They brought only trouble. But this cowboy, he seemed different. She didn't know why. But something about the way he moved, the way he spoke to himself softly as he worked, told her that he wasn't a threat. Still, she kept her distance, hiding behind a large boulder. Her instincts told her to be cautious, but her curiosity got the better of her. She couldn't stop herself from watching him, trying to understand who he was. After some time, the man finished his meal and sat by the fire, gazing into the flames. His eyes were distant, lost in thought, as though he were thinking about something important. Atsari felt a strange pull in her chest, as though the firelight had drawn her into its warmth. She stepped closer, her bare feet making no sound against the soft desert sand. It was then that he spoke, his voice low but clear in the quiet of the night. "I know you're out there," he said, his gaze still fixed on the fire. "I can feel your eyes on me." Atsari froze. How had he known? She had been careful. She had always been careful. She stayed hidden in the shadows out of sight. Yet here he was, speaking to her as though he had been expecting her. "Why are you here?" she asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. The cowboy didn't flinch. He simply turned his head slowly, locking eyes with her. His expression was calm, almost understanding. "I'm not here to cause trouble," he said. "I'm just passing through. I've heard stories about a girl, an Apache girl who's been living alone in these mountains. I didn't expect to find you out here." Atsari's heart skipped a beat. A girl? He must have heard the same rumors she had. People had spoken of her for years. whispers of the last living member of a lost tribe, the girl who had refused to leave the desert. "Why are you looking for me?" she asked, her voice softening but still guarded. "I'm trying to understand what happened to your people," the cowboy replied, his eyes never leaving hers. "I've heard things. About the raids, about how your tribe disappeared. I want to know the truth. I want to help." Atsadi didn't know what to make of this. A man who wanted to help? She had lived through enough to know that most people only came to cause harm. Yet something in the cowboy's voice made her question her assumptions. "Why should I trust you?" she asked, stepping out of the shadows and into the dim firelight. The cowboy's face softened and he set down the small stick he had been poking the fire with. "You don't have to trust me," he said. "But if you'll let me, I'd like to help you find out what happened to your people. Maybe together we can find some answers." Atsadi studied him for a long moment. His face was weathered by the sun and wind, his hands calloused from hard work. But there was a sincerity in his eyes that made her hesitate. She didn't know why, but she felt as if he was telling the truth. "You don't understand," she said quietly, her voice almost a whisper. "I've been waiting for years. My people, they're gone. I don't know what happened to them, and I don't know if they'll ever come back." The cowboy nodded slowly. "I understand more than you think," he said, "but I don't believe they're gone forever. Maybe we can find a way to bring them back." Atsadi felt something stir inside her. Hope. A feeling she hadn't let herself have in so long. Could it be possible? Could her tribe be out there waiting to be found? Could she finally get the answers she had been searching for? For the first time in years, Atsadi allowed herself to believe that she wasn't alone in this world, that someone might be willing to help her find her family to bring her people back. The fire crackled and the night stretched on, filled with the promise of something new. Atsadi sat down beside the cowboy, her mind racing with the possibilities of what might lie ahead. She had waited for so long. Perhaps the time had finally come to stop waiting and to start seeking. Together they would find the answers. The night passed quietly. The fire's warm glow flickered softly across the desert, but Atsadi couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with the possibilities of what the cowboy Caleb had said. Was it possible? Could they really find her tribe after all this time? For years, Atsadi had walked alone, listening only to the whispers of the wind and the distant calls of the desert animals. She had kept hope buried deep inside, afraid to face the truth. But now, Caleb had stirred something inside her, a hope she hadn't allowed herself to feel in a long time. As the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Caleb stirred from his sleep. His cowboy hat was tilted low over his eyes, and his clothes were worn from days of travel, but he had an energy about him that Atsadi hadn't seen in anyone else in years. He wasn't just another settler passing through. He was someone who truly wanted to help. Atsadi sat up, brushing the sand from her clothing. She had spent the morning in thought, considering the cowboy's offer. Finally, she made her decision. It was time to stop waiting. It was time to act. "I'll go with you," she said quietly. Caleb looked up in surprise, his expression softening. "You sure?" "This won't be easy, Atsadi. It could be dangerous. I've faced danger before," she replied, her voice firm. "But I've waited long enough. It's time to find the truth." Caleb nodded, his respect for her growing. "All right, then let's go. Together we'll find the answers." For the next few days, the two traveled across the desert. They followed the signs, small clues left behind from the lost tribe. Broken arrows, abandoned campsites, faint footprints that might have belonged to an Apache. Atsadi's heart beat faster with every step. She had dreamed of this moment for so long. The feeling that her tribe might be out there waiting to be found was almost overwhelming. Caleb, though skilled in survival and the ways of the West, couldn't keep up with Atsadi's pace. She was born of the land. Her feet were light on the earth, and she knew the desert better than anyone. Every morning she would wake before him, already ready to move forward. Caleb couldn't help but admire her strength and determination. She had endured so much, yet she never gave up. One day, as they were crossing a stretch of barren land, Atsadi stopped suddenly. She knelt down to the ground, her fingers brushing over the sand. Caleb watched her closely, sensing that something had changed. "This way," she said, her voice low. "I feel it." They passed through here. He didn't need any more explanation. He trusted her completely. Together, they followed the faint trail through the hills. their journey becoming more urgent with every step. Hours later, as the sun began to set, they reached a small canyon. Atsadi stopped at the entrance, her eyes scanning the shadows. "There's something here," she said. "My people. They camped here." Caleb studied the area carefully. "You're sure?" Atsadi nodded. "I can feel it. The land speaks to me." Together, they explored the canyon, finding signs of a long-abandoned camp. Broken pots, old leather tents, and the scattered remains of a fire pit told the story of a group that had once lived here. Atsadi's heart quickened, but there was no sign of her tribe, only the remnants of a life that had vanished. "Where did they go?" Atsadi asked, her voice a mixture of hope and sadness. "Why did they leave?" Caleb stepped beside her, placing a hand on her shoulder. "We'll find them, Atsadi. I promise." They continued to search, and as the days passed, the signs grew clearer. But the deeper they went into the desert, the more they realized that something wasn't right. The land had been scarred by more than just time. The presence of something dark, something dangerous was in the air. One night, as they sat by the fire, Caleb broke the silence. "I've been thinking," he said. "What if the people who took your tribe aren't just interested in your people? What if they're doing this to other tribes too?" Atsadi looked at him, her eyes narrowing. "You think they've attacked others?" "It's possible," Caleb said. "The more I think about it, the more I believe that whoever's behind this isn't just wiping out your tribe. They're taking land, anything that can make them richer. The people they've taken are just obstacles." Atsadi was silent for a moment, the weight of Caleb's words sinking in. "If they took my people, they may still be out there. They may be alive. They may be," Caleb agreed. "And we need to keep looking." The thought that her tribe might still be out there, alive but taken by some cruel force, made Atsadi's heart ache. But it also gave her a renewed sense of purpose. She couldn't stop now, not when they were so close to the truth. The next morning, as they rode through a narrow pass between two rocky cliffs, they encountered a group of settlers. At first the men seemed friendly, but something about their eyes made Atsadi uneasy. Caleb noticed it too. One of the men stepped forward, smiling. "You two are a long way from home. What's your business in these parts?" "We're just passing through," Caleb said cautiously. The man didn't seem convinced. "I think you might be looking for something more than just passing through. We've seen your kind before. People like you don't wander out here without a reason." Caleb's hand instinctively moved to the rifle at his side, but he kept his voice calm. "We're not looking for trouble." The man studied Caleb for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Well, if you're not looking for trouble, then maybe you don't mind sharing some information. A lot of people have been disappearing out here. No one knows why." Atsadi's heart raced. This was it. This was the clue they had been searching for. "Who's disappearing?" she asked, her voice sharp. The man hesitated, then shrugged. "It's not just the Apache. People from other tribes, too. Settlers, soldiers. No one knows who's behind it. But it's happening more and more." Caleb's eyes narrowed. "What are you suggesting?" "I'm just saying," the man replied with a sly smile. "Maybe you should head back. This desert isn't as friendly as it looks." Caleb didn't trust the man. "We'll be fine. Thanks for the advice." As they rode away, Atsadi's mind raced. Whoever was behind the disappearances, they were far more dangerous than she had imagined. And they were still out there. But now, with Caleb by her side, she wasn't afraid to confront them. Days passed, and they followed the clues deeper into the desert. The air grew hotter, and the trail became harder to follow. But Atsadi was determined. She couldn't turn back now. Her tribe, her people were out there, and she was going to find them. Finally, after what felt like weeks, they came across a hidden camp, an abandoned outpost surrounded by high cliffs. As they approached, Atsadi felt the hair on the back of her neck stand up. This was it. This was where her people had been taken. "Caleb," she whispered. "I can feel them. They're here." Caleb nodded, his eyes scanning the area for danger. "Stay close. We're not alone." As they moved closer to the camp, Atsadi's heart pounded in her chest. She could feel the weight of her ancestors' spirits with her, urging her forward. She was closer than ever to the truth. But danger was closer than they thought.